Hey guys, what's going on? Today I'm going to show you exactly how I wrapped this car for less than $200 and how you can do the same, wrapping basically any car you want for say $195. I think is about what I spent, 185, something like that, on enough, like a whole roll of wrap for a whole car. Now, before I start explaining to you guys how much I bought the wrap for and the quality of the wrap, all that, I want to say that this car cost me $1,000, actually less than that a little bit, to build the whole thing, including the cost of the car. So keep an eye out for the video on my channel where I'm going to be showing you all of the details of that. After I sell this, I'm going to tell you how much I sold it for, how I did everything I did to it, how I got it for so cheap, and how you can do the same. And the silver HX right behind me, I'm also going to do a series on soon on flipping that one, but it'll be less of a flip and more of just a budget build. The overall theme with this wrap, this build, and what I'm going to do to that HX is that all of this stuff is things that I've researched, stuff I've tried to find on YouTube that no one really shows you how to really build a quality budget build with the least amount of money possible. Because, for example, when you're looking for budget wraps on YouTube, Cheetah and a Nosatech are sort of your main options that people give you. But really, I'm going to explain where I got this wrap from and how I did it so cheap. But there's always more options, and I'm going to try to give you guys things that no one else is telling you and stuff that's hard to find that just a lot of people don't know. And that's the theme across that build. I'm gonna do things like how to make your automatic shifter look like a manual, basically not manual swapping it, but making it cheaply look as cool as possible on the interior, doing some total interior rehaul, things like making the stock HX rims look like Type R rims, and also those seat covers inside the car. If you saw at the beginning in the little edit that I did, these things were basically free and they're really nice quality. They're just seat covers, but they change the look of the interior and feel. But getting into this wrap, I actually bought it on Alibaba. In the description, I'll kind of give you guys better information. If you need help, just comment, because maybe the links I'm gonna give go outdated after a while, but you can always find this stuff. They've got all these colors, like I'll show you guys some here. They've got, this one is a white to blue pearlescent. It's hard to see in the daytime, especially because it's not really much sun or whatever, but you can kind of see it, I'm sure. I'll show you guys later on the actual material itself. I'll show you guys what it looks like to work with, and you can see on the roll a lot better what the shine on the material looks like. But they've got all these colors, like this EM1 almost blue gloss. They've got a lot of matte colors is what I suggest if you're working on something like this. It's an old beater and you're trying to hide dents and stuff like that. The matte does a lot better of a job. So yeah, any color you want, any color that a main wrap brand has, they basically have. You could pay like easily $700 for a roll of wrap, and Cheetah I think is still like almost $500 for a roll, just enough to wrap a small car, and this stuff is half that. So even if you have no idea what you're doing, you're gonna pay literally double for any other wrap than this stuff. So you can buy 2 rolls of this and still be under, because half of the cost of this stuff is shipping anyway. So if you're buying 2 rolls, it'll be less than $400. So you're gonna spend a lot less than any other budget wrap, and you're gonna have extra material to learn with, enough to redo every panel on the car over again if you mess it up. Obviously, it's a little different to work with than any other wrap company. I'll go over with you guys what the differences are, things that you have to keep in mind using this stuff. this car specifically, the rear back bumper and the front bumper, people that owned it previously resprayed the clear coat and did a horrible job prepping it, because if you sat the wrap on there for 5 minutes in the heat and tried to peel it off without any heat, it would just take all the clear coat off with it. And that's basically a worst case scenario when you're trying to wrap a car, unless you feel like sanding the whole thing, which I didn't. So even with that struggle, plus I'm outside doing it in the winter time, so imagine the worst conditions possible, and I was still able to get this wrap on looking good without, basically, I mean, there's like one seam right here. I don't know if you can see it that well. I'm gonna show you guys in better detail everything you need to know about this, but I was able to get this whole thing on with worst case scenario looking good for $200. And let's just take a look at the wrap a little closer. Now, with this seam right here, what happens, mainly the only thing that really gave me trouble with this wrap is the wrap will actually kind of overstretch itself really easily, and that can get bad quickly because it can turn into a hole in the wrap, and that's what happened there on the back. That's why I had to make that seam. But the best way to avoid that, especially for a beginner, I know it sounds scary, you can see that even though that's there, it's not a big deal. So even if you've never wrapped before and that sounds scary to you because you don't think that you'd be able to figure that out as a beginner, if for one you have a garage space, like obviously not mine, it's just full of shit, but if you can pull your car into your garage, you have absolutely nothing to worry about. That makes it so much easier. But if you don't, just being able to do it in the summertime, if you live somewhere remotely warm, I mean, it's like winter here, it's not ideal conditions whatsoever, but as long as it's warm, you really have nothing to worry about. You won't have to give it consistent heat because it'll have a good consistency. Really, that's the only concern I would think for a beginner trying to use this wrap. Another thing that's nice about wrap is, if I show you guys right here, you're not going to see anything wrong with it. But if I take you closer, you're going to see I dinged it here and I dinged it there with the knife. And what happens is, through heat cycles, this will shrink and it'll open that gap. Even though it was really just a straight cut in it, that cut will open up over time. And it's not going to get any worse than that. That's just what it looks like now. But stuff like that, it even kind of happened down here. But you would never notice that because, especially on a matte material, it hides all of the things that are wrong with it really well. I mean, obviously you can still see it, but there's dents all over this place, and there's like a big one here. This has some Bondo work that was not done great, that I didn't really put much time into, but matte material hides it really well. So this is what the wrap looked like. This is just an extra piece I had. You could see a lot better the pearlescent when it's off the car, because the car doesn't have a lot of compound curves, and that's where you see it. You see it a lot more at night, and it looks really cool. You just gotta kind of trust me on that, because you can't see it right now. But I'm gonna cut off a piece of this and show you guys what it's like to wrap with, to kind of give you an idea. And this is good too, because there's a lot of spidering, some chips in the paint, just a lot of bullshit that we're gonna wrap over, and you guys can see how well a lot of that gets hidden. Now it's cold out, and obviously I am outside, so these are basically worst conditions imaginable, but you can kind of hear that it's like papery. It's not super flexible right now. So that's what I mean. You need a lot of heat to even work with this stuff to begin with, because you can see this is not gonna work like that, right? Now it's kind of over warm, but so now it has some stretch to it. You can lay it down a lot easier. And I mean, I don't even have the right tools right now. As long as you work quickly outside and you clean the surface, you really don't get that much dust underneath. But that, and just the regulation of being able to control the temperature, is the main reason that outside you wouldn't want to work ideally. Already you can see a lot of that stuff got hidden, and something that this material is not nearly as good at as something like Avery is the amount in which it can sink into a recess like this. If you're going to, you have to feed this material more than you would normal material because it will discolor from a lot less stretch. But personally, I think as long as you're learning that way and you're not used to just cutting the corner and bridging every gap, so basically this gap is one that is small enough to bridge. And you can see that one chip is still there, but obviously it's not nearly as bad as it was. And it's easy to see all the things wrong with it as you're going, but once you get the whole thing wrapped and you take a step back, you're not going to see all these tiny details that are messed up. And that's not even fault of the wrap, that's obviously just the car. But this is why, if you're going to do a cheap job on a cheap car, there's no reason to buy a nice wrap to do that. This conformed to that shape pretty good. It's not going to lift or anything unless you put it in a really compound curve. A good example of that is inside of this handle. I had some lifting because I tried to stretch it, like I was saying, bridge it instead of feeding it in, which you can't do with this material, so just keep that in mind. So basically that's everything I have to show you about the material. Overall, if you buy a matte material especially, it hides a lot of the imperfections in an old car like this, and I just think it's the best idea to use on something that's old and cheap. So overall, the price breakdown on this, I spent $95 on the material and $95 on the shipping. And the trick to that is on Alibaba, I'm going to send you guys whatever you need to find the same product I did. But if you ask for the cheapest shipping option, it's going to be by sea. It'll take like a month or whatever. It just takes longer, but you get the shipping for about half price if you do it that way. And that's how you get this a lot cheaper, because the material cost itself is nothing. So especially if you like wrapping cars, if you want to practice on a lot of them, if all your friends want your cars wrapped, you can make some money off your friends, whatever. Buy like 6 rolls, however many you want, and pay less shipping per roll because you're getting more of them. And that way you're going to get all your rolls once you divide it up at a cheaper amount than normal. And that's the trick to this stuff. If you buy a lot of them at once, you're going to get the best deal possible. But yeah, overall, I suggest this as a beginner's wrap, just as a budget wrap for anybody, as long as you don't live in the desert and you're not planning on keeping it for a long time. If this is not your main car that you really care about, because in that case you would probably run into the actual removal of it, or you'd want to keep this wrap on long term, in which case you would remove it after it's been on there a long time, and there might be like more glue residue, or this material might harden up and become more difficult to take off all in one piece than a main brand wrap. So if it's something you really care about, I wouldn't use this, but in almost any other scenario, especially just learning, this is a great option. So let me know if you guys want any other information on this stuff, if you have any questions, if you need help finding it, whatever. I'm going to put the link in the description, but let me know whatever you guys need. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed, or if you're interested in learning other budget tips for this car, that car, even the 4Runner. Everything I'm doing is basically the cheapest way you could do it without being dangerous or without just being total crap, basically. But yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you guys next time. Keep an eye out for the other videos.